Good afternoon. I am Dr. Ann Brill, Dean of the William Allen White School of Journalism and Mass Communications here at the University of Kansas. Thank you for joining us this afternoon on this beautiful Kansas spring day for our William Allen White Day event and awards presentation. As you may know, this event normally has two components. First, the awarding of the National Citation from the William Allen White Foundation Board of Trustees, and second, the announcement of the school's scholarships and awards. This year, unfortunately, we are not able to include our scholarship announcements due to the delay in the release of the free application for federal student aid, FAFSA. If you've not heard about it, it was kind of a problem this year. But we have the data now. We will go ahead and award our scholarships later on. And I just really want to thank the Scholarship and Awards Committee for all of their work. I mean, the hours and hours they put into this, matching and taking care of our students is really great. So thank you very much, Scholarship and Awards Committee members. And we are pleased today that we are still able to honor our student awards recipients and their donors. So William Allen White Day is the signature event for our school, and we look forward to it each year for so many reasons. Of course, it's the day that we honor the namesake of our school and his commitment to the ideals of journalism, truth, transparency, and defending freedom of the press. Today, we also recognize our students who are committed to learning those values, who believe in the power of this profession and understand how important they are to the future of it. Also today, we honor and celebrate our donors who are crucial to advancing the mission of the school and the profession at large. Through their generosity, they help students who want to succeed in this field and make a difference, just as National Citation winners have done throughout their careers. In recognizing the contributions of our National Citation recipient, we honor the countless journalists who often do not get the credit they deserve, those who put themselves in danger, and some who have died in the pursuit of the truth. Even as we meet here today, a Wall Street Journal reporter, Evan Gerkovich, has been held illegally in Russia for more than a year for doing his job as a foreign correspondent. And the Committee to Protect Journalists estimates that of this week, 95 journalists have been killed in the Israeli-Gaza war. So today is the day that we set aside to pay tribute to the past, recognize the present, and illuminate the future. And I want to thank all of you for being a part of it. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the chair of the William Allen White Board of Trustees, Barbara Roshevitz. Barbara Roshevitz. Barbara Roshevitz currently chairs the William Allen White Foundation Board of Trustees. Born and raised in Wyandotte County, Kansas, she graduated from the University of Kansas and served as editor of the University Daily Kansan. She began her career covering the Kansas State House for United Press International. Barb credits her J School education with setting her up for a career covering government at the state, national, and international levels, including as a foreign correspondent in the Middle East with the Wall Street Journal. She went on to become an editor at stateline.org, when it was one of the first online-only charity-funded news sites in the country. She then developed a specialty in data analysis that she combined with her journalism skills to create Fiscal 50, a free data tool that analyzes states' finances, and she did that while working at the Pew Charitable Trust. Although most of her career has been in Washington, D.C., she has never shaken her Kansas roots and became known for throwing Kansas Day celebrations each year for her work colleagues. I've heard they were a lot of fun. After retirement, Barbara returned to KU as the Hearst Visiting Professional in Residence in the fall of 2022. Please welcome Barbara Roshevitz.
Thank you, Dean Brill. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that. This year marks actually a first. In the 74 years that the William Allen White Foundation has presented its highest honor, the National Citation Award. The first is that it's the first time this citation is being awarded to a media organization rather than to an individual for work in journalism whose impact on America exemplifies the highest ideals of William Allen White, the journalism school's namesake. But this first also brings us back to the beginning of this award. The National Citation was established to honor the legacy of that famous Kansan, William Allen White, legendary editor of the small-town Emporia Gazette, who died 80 years ago in 1944. His voice on the big issues of the day carried weight then, not only in Kansas, but nationwide. So it is indeed appropriate and meaningful that today we honor another small-town Kansas newspaper, the Marion County Record, for its nationally significant mark on journalism. Typically, the trustees have voted to give this award to nationally recognizable names such as Walter Cronkite, Bob Woodward, Cokie Roberts, Gordon Parks, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, last year Kevin Merida. In choosing this local newspaper for this year's award, the trustees of the foundation are also honoring today the importance of local journalism across America. Local journalism plays a vital role in sustaining our nation's democracy, even as the survival of news outlets, and particularly those in small towns and rural areas, is severely threatened. The Marion County Record is a family-owned weekly in a town of 1,900 people on the western edge of the Flint Hills. Over its more than 150 years of existence, it has long been known for practicing fearless and independent journalism. For 3 years running, it has been judged the best in Kansas for overall news and writing among newspapers its size by the Kansas Press Association, among numerous other awards. Then, last August, the Marion County Record was unexpectedly thrust into the national spotlight. Police officers and sheriff's deputies swooped into the Record's newsroom and the home of its owner and publisher with a search warrant. They seized the newsroom's computers, file server, backup drives, the personal cell phones of the staffers, and other items. The raid came in response to reporting the newspaper had been doing on a local business owner's driver's license record. The police raid shocked the journalism world internationally. First Amendment advocates rallied to the newspaper's defense. You know, it's practically unheard of in the United States for law enforcers to conduct a newsroom search. Not only could that have compromised the names of reporters' confidential sources, but it could have sent a chilling effect on news gathering and actually threatened the freedom of the press. Put to the test, the Marion County Record refused to buckle, even after its 98-year-old co-owner, Joanne Meyer, died of cardiac arrest the day after law enforcers had spent hours rifling through her home. Without its computers to put out the next edition and meet its next deadline, they somehow figured out a way to cobble this together and meet their deadline. The headline on that first edition after the raid declared, "Seized but not silenced." Today, we have the honor of hosting 3 staff members of the Marion County Record with us here to celebrate receiving this award. As I call your names, will you please stand? I'd like to introduce Joanne Meyer's son, who is the editor of the Marion County Record, EricMeyer. And also here today, who were present during the raid, were the reporter Phyllis Zorn and office manager Sherry Bentz. Thank you so much for being here and making this so special for all of us. After the police raid, Eric became a widely seen and quoted fighter on the need to protect journalists' rights. You may have seen him being interviewed on television any number of times sitting at his office desk. I suspect that Eric has experienced quite a lot more excitement than he thought he would when he retired 3 years ago as a journalism professor at the University of Illinois to return to run his hometown newspaper, which he and his father and mother had owned since 1998, and which Mr. and Mrs. Meyer had worked for decades. For Eric, being back in Marion was the culmination of a long and distinguished journey that included a degree from the William Allen White School of Journalism, where he was editor of the University Daily Kansan, and including 17 years as an editor at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel before he entered academia. Well, ultimately, the local authorities backed down and returned the Marion County Record's materials. Just last week, the newspaper filed a federal First Amendment lawsuit against the officials who planned and carried out last year's raid. The lawsuit accuses the mayor, the police chief, and sheriff of seeking revenge for unfavorable news coverage through falsified and invalid search warrants. And herein lies another parallel with the legacy of William Allen White. White was arrested for allegedly violating a statute by placing a placard in his office window in support of striking railroad workers. He fought back with a powerful editorial in defense of freedom of expression that won him the 1923 Pulitzer Prize. Charges against him were later dropped. So it is with great pleasure that I invite Eric Meyer to the podium to accept the William Allen White Foundation's 2024 National Citation Award on behalf of his paper, The Marion County Record. Eric, would you come up? Why don't you come over this, come here for a moment. So Mr. Meyer will deliver his remarks, and then we'll have a little bit of time for questions and answers, maybe 10 minutes or so for questions and answers. I want to tell you, this is the medallion. It has the picture of William Allen White on it, and the back of it says, "For work in journalism that exemplifies William Allen White's highest ideals by serving the profession and impacting America." Congratulations, Eric, and the Marion County Record. This is for you. Do I get a handshake?
Thank you. Very nice. Thanks, Barbara. We are literally humbled by this as a graduate from this university from many, many years ago. This is one of these places where you go around and look at rooms that are named after people, and you realize I knew that person. There's a plaque in the hall about the award for student activism, and it's named after somebody, and that was my Western Civ instructor in 2007. Now, what's even better than that is this summer, or a couple of weeks ago, I got an envelope in the mail, and it had. You may not have seen all the clippings from the Kansas City Star that have been run about this story, and here they are. And I looked at the return address. It's that guy. I've not talked to him since I had him in Western Civ in 1972, but he sent me these clippings. It's amazing. And the other thing that's been amazing about all of this is just the outpouring of support that the Marion County Record has received after this. People all over the world have come behind us. We've had tens of thousands of messages. A lot of people have subscribed to us. Sherry, who has had to handle all those subscriptions, can tell you how many there have been and how much of a difficulty it's been. But Marion is the 122nd largest town in the state of Kansas. Marion County is the 35th largest county in the state of Kansas. As of today, we have the 8th largest paid circulation in the state of Kansas. It is so fitting and so nice to receive the White Award, and I don't think any of the trustees even know this, but there's actually connections between my family and the White family. My grandmother worked for William Allen White. She was a correspondent for Cassidy, and the Whites used to come down they had a hotel and restaurant in Cassidy, used to come down and picnic at the hotel. My father was there. He had just enlisted in the Army. and they were going to send him to school because he was in this training program that was going to create the next generation of officers. They sent him to college, and then he was going to go over to Europe, but then they decided at some point, send him to the Battle of the Bulge, what the heck. But Mr. White told him, said, now you go up there to KU and you get a journalism degree, which Mr. White failed to complete, but you get the journalism degree and come back here to Emporia and I'll put you to work. Well, as you heard earlier, Mr. White died in 44, and my father didn't graduate till 48, so he came out in 48 and tried to say, well, where can I go that, Mr. White's promise is, the networking doesn't work anymore. So he said, let's find another paper that's kind of like it, and he found the Marion County Record. The Marion County Record, our corporate name is Hoke Publishing Company. Yes, it's the same Hoke as Hoke Auditorium. Now, that actually is kind of a joke. Mr. White and Mr. Hoke were both editors at roughly the same time. They were big on Chautauqua Circuit, another thing. Mr. White and Mr. Hoke both ran for governor. Mr. Hoke won, and Mr. White didn't. But the naming of Hoke Auditorium was actually kind of a joke because apparently Mr. Hoke was not a huge supporter of the University of Kansas, and they decided to name a building after him to make it, getting a little more money out of it. But my father had went to that newspaper, started work there. I got down to a week, and the person running the payroll at the time said, oh, what are we supposed to pay you? We never talked about what your pay was going to be. And so the editor, Horton Hoke, a grandson of E.W. Hoke, said, well, I'll just pay you whatever I get paid. And that's been kind of the spirit at the Marion County Record. Now, don't let them hear too much because, this is a calling. This is a calling that people go through, not unlike a religious calling, not unlike a calling to become a teacher or whatever else. This is something that people do because they care about the community in which they live in. And if you look back to the great journalism of our history, most newspapers were founded by somebody not that was wanting to be a stop on a journey to go from town to town to town to town to town within some chain, but they cared about the town that they were in. That's why I came back to Marion. I don't take a salary. I do take a bonus if we get one, but we don't really have a salary structure for me. They work for far less than they should be paid. Don't ask me for raises immediately. But we try our darndest because it makes a difference. We care about the community. And I, as a retiring faculty member, had talked for many years that I thought the industry was making some mistakes. Now, I taught some of the higher tech stuff. I did consulting. In fact, I made more money as a consultant to online newspapers than I made as a faculty member for most of my career as a faculty member. So I'm not a Luddite by any manner or means, but it is important for us to know that what we've lost in following every tech trend is that we've lost sight of journalism. And journalism is important. And if we don't think it's important, we have to see why what happened to us happened. What happened to us was somebody politically weaponized the police force, and they thought they could get away with it. And they thought they could get away with it because of a prevailing sense among government. We talk about the swamp in Washington and inside the Beltway. There's a swamp everywhere in government. And it's led by people who say government can do whatever it wants unless somebody sues. And they get this advice from organizations that are around the state, the League of Municipalities, the League of Counties, and other things. And, most people can't afford to sue. Unless there's a discovery, unless there's an injury or something, you get one of these, the bull attorneys or whatever else that come out and they're going to take a third of your settlement, which we're going to do with the suits we're doing. But just to protect us against getting our material back, there's no recovery on that. Our legal fees for that are like $180,000. Fortunately, we had a libel policy. The libel insurance people didn't even know this provision was in their policy, that if your newsroom is seized, we will reimburse your legal costs. And they said, we've never had a claim against this, but it's there, we're going to pay it. And thank God the Society of Professional Journalists Legal Defense Fund took up the deductible that we had, so we didn't have to pay for that. But it's important to fight it. The city of Marion has an annual budget of about $8 million. We're suing for probably well more than $8 million. Now, we don't want the money. In fact, I've already said, if we get the money, we're probably going to donate it away. But we have to set the precedent that this isn't something that's allowable. This is not something that is allowed under American democracy. I had the privilege a couple of weeks ago of meeting Maria Ressa, the Nobel Peace Prize winner from the Philippines, who is an advocate of journalism. She'd been following our story in real time from the Philippines. And I asked her enough questions that I knew she knew the first day story, and then she saw the second day story, and she heard about my mother who had protested the search, dying the second day in the middle of a discussion I was having with her. But Maria said, we in the rest of the world look to the United States as the place where there is freedom. We can understand that, in the Philippines, they may do these awful things. In Russia, they may do these awful things. In Egypt, they may do these awful things. But in the United States, that's the beacon of liberty. And the beacon just went out. We have to relight it. We have to relight it in a time when it's difficult for journalists to work. We do have all of the contraction of the industry, which isn't caused as much by technology as it's caused by corporate greed. It's caused by a lot of factors that have come in, but one of them has come in is the fact that people don't care as much anymore about knowing the facts. They care about images. And how does that happen? Well, it happens when you believe that you don't have any control over your government anymore. How many in this room wanted to see the 2024 elections be against Trump, against Biden? Almost nobody wanted it, yet it happened. We're a democracy. How can that happen? How can that happen? It's out of our control. How many people wanted to see something addressed in a legislature that wasn't addressed? Wanted to be an issue that they wanted to talk about. And instead, all we hear about are transgender, undocumented abortion doctors who are stuffing ballot boxes. Or on the other side, about the equally things like the living wage and whatever else. We've been radicalized. We've been radicalized because we only care about heuristics. We only care about slogans. We only care about images. Some of that's because people have not been able to make a change in government. Some of that is because of one of the real enemies to journalism, social media. The echo chambers of social media make you don't care about facts anymore. You already know what the facts are. You already know what they are. It doesn't matter what the truth is. In the great old movie Absence of Malice, Kurt Ludke wrote a line in which they talk about, we talk about we journalists present truth, and Paul Newman's character in the movie says, you don't present truth, you present what people say. And Sally Field's character responds, well, no, I just do it poorly. Well, I talked to Kurt Ludke, who wrote the script. That line was added by the director, who was afraid that the movie would be panned by critics if we didn't say it, but it's true. Too often, we report stenographically. We report what this person said, no truth. We have to be aggressive. To get people back, we have to tell people the facts that they need to know, but we cannot force it down them like eat your vegetables. It requires a higher level of journalism. It requires a level of journalism that puts a human face, that makes us understand, that makes us relate to the people who are affected by the things that go on. When we do that, we have a track record in this society of the world changing. You can think of things that have changed over the past few years. When I came to KU in 1971, I for the first time met a gay person. Well, I actually had met many gay people before that. They just hadn't told me that. But in fact, I was co-valedictorian in my high school class, and the other valedictorian is gay. He didn't tell us that at the time. But living at KU, I met that. We've found people who are loving couples who are the same sex, and we got exposed to them, and we heard their story, and we changed our mind about that issue. We've changed our mind about reproductive freedom, although the Supreme Court has changed it back for us, or tried to. We have changed our mind about many issues, and the way we do it is by getting to know people enough so that we look at the facts, so that we're not looking at them as transgender, undocumented abortion doctors stuffing ballot boxes, even though none of that happens. Why do we do that? Because it works well in the echo chamber. Social media echo chamber works well. It drives political contributions. It drives discussion. It drives people to say, when you try to present facts, fake news, fake news. During the raid, we had a group of TV people come in. They were gathered in front of Sherry's desk, and I called an impromptu news conference, and I asked them, how many of you people in here have ever been accused of producing fake news? Every hand goes up. How many of you have been accused of being negative in your coverage, which was what eventually got us because we were considered negative? Their hand went up. I'm sure Mr. White was accused of negative coverage. I'm sure Mr. White was accused of occasionally reporting things that people didn't want to have reported. It's nice to see that we're honoring that, but we need to carry forward with it, and we need to understand, and I'm a child of the 60s and 70s, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And that means those of us who are out here, who are journalists, we need to keep our work, we need to keep working. We need to work harder than ever. Students need to think about doing this instead of becoming social media mavens of some sort, or influencers, or party planners, or whatever else, or selling stuff, or doing PR and lying for a living. No, there's some good PR people out there, but I knew one or two once in a while. But no, seriously, we have to, it is our role. We are the soldiers for democracy. We are the people worrying about the IEDs of the landscape, which are politics. All politics is local, all journalism is local. We need to think about that. Students, you need to think about working for a small news organization. There is no such thing as small journalism, just small minds about what it is. You will learn more. You will find that that battlefield is still there, whether you're working there or at the New York Times. We're still covering the same stories. What Phyllis covers for the Marion County Record is as important to Marion, and perhaps more so, than what someone for the New York Times covers for the New York Times. And you have the advantage of being able to figure out what it is that people are interested in, how you can get them out of this cocoon. Because you're going to run into them. You're going to go to the grocery store, and they're going to be picking up a can of tomatoes right next to you. And it's going to be a lot easier for you to figure out, how can I make them get out of this sloganeering thing? What do I need to do with my story? Now, I'm just not saying change the world. I don't come to this world with an agenda for change. I'm a Jeffersonian in the sense that I believe if you give everybody the facts, most of the time they will arrive at the right conclusion. I might agree with it, I might not agree with it. I don't care whether I agree with it or not. I just care that they have enough facts to come to that conclusion. We need to get back to that. We need to stop thinking about whether we're going to, I need some video with that. I need to tweet about that. I need to post this, that. I need to have a beer party for my subscribers. I need to do all these other things. We need to get back to journalism. Mr. White would agree with that. I don't think he had any of those things. Not that the technology was there to do it, but it was no nonsense. And we need to stir things up. It takes somebody maybe to stir them up and needs willingness to stir them up. We're going now 2 generations into the I love you, you love me, and won't you be my neighbor? And everybody wants to fit in instead of standing out. Journalism is about standing out, not fitting in. Journalism is about challenging people's beliefs. There's many institutions that need reform. I'm very concerned about the Common Core that's going on educationally right now, what implications that has, and other things of that nature. But what do you do about it? You can either give up and say, the world's gone to hell in a handbasket and I don't care. I'm going to go out and play golf. Well, I went out and played golf once, shot a 72, made it halfway through the 3rd hole. That wasn't my desire to do that. I decided, you know, as much as I've practiced this, as much as I've preached about how we need to do better in journalism, I'm going to go try to see whether I can do it. So I'm going to make the challenge to the people out there, even the retired people. Go write something, go cover something, go work about it. To the people still working in the business who, I know you can't necessarily afford to take a bad offer for your paper if you're going to be retiring soon, but try to make sure that who replaces you is going to be committed to journalism as much as you are. To the young students out there who are just getting started, be aggressive, go after things. You know, maybe it's just us being have a little bit of a nerve to us, having a little bit of an edge to what we do. Mr. White certainly did. He didn't have the sense that I'm going to just fit in. He was challenging people's beliefs. Maybe we need to do that a little more. Maybe we need to make people interested in our work. I can sure tell you when I was editor of the Kansan, if Suzanne Shaw is around here, we did a lot of things that I know some people were around. Yale Abuhalka was here. He was probably part of that in some cases too. We did a lot of things that caused a lot of trouble. Nothing wrong with causing trouble. You want to be a disruptor? Be a disruptor. We need to be disruptors. Not necessarily technologically disruptors, not financially disruptors. We need to disrupt the thought process. And if you don't think so, just look at what's going on nationally in politics. If we don't disrupt that, what happens next? And whether it's from the left or the right, it's extremely polarized and no one's thinking of issues. It's our job to make them think of issues. So instead of blaming some former president or current senator or some political party or some white rural rage or whatever else you want to blame, look to yourself. Look in the mirror. Have you done anything to fix it? And you should. I appreciate the award. I thank you very much for this and hope that we can continue. I will say that this was a test before we had our raid. I told you how our circulation had gone up. We tried to be very aggressive, thanks to the hard work of people like those here. Our ad revenue was up. Our circulation was up before the raid. It was working. It's going to take some time. This isn't going to happen overnight. This isn't going to be something that'll show up on the bottom line of a corporation the next year. But we don't care about that. We care about communities and life in general, and life long term, and how democracy is going to work long term. If we can make ourselves be an agent for change in that area, we will have fulfilled what Mr. White tried to do as editor of the Emporia Gazette. And I thank the trustees for going out of their way this year to recognize small journalism, to recognize an organization, and to recognize someone who, hey, I'm going to speak at a thing tomorrow, Media and the Law. The headliner is not a journalist, it's Ashley Judd. Hey, I'm not Ashley Judd. I don't sing, I don't act, I don't sit on the court at basketball games on the front row. Most organizations bring in a speaker like this, they bring in somebody who's a name, not EricMeyer. I guess I'm starting down the path. I just referred to myself in the third person, so maybe I'm making it. But we want it was bold of them in the William Allen White Foundation and the School of Journalism to honor a group, a small group, one that doesn't have star power, that you're not coming here to hear, some celebrity say how they did something or other. I've been interviewed by a lot of people. I was interviewed by Cuomo. He's a jerk. Was interviewed by Dan Le Batard on ESPN, who had me suck helium out of a balloon while he was there. I've seen all sorts of quality of journalism, and I've been interviewed by some really good journalists. There are good journalists around, and they're facing challenges, not just ours. Read what happened to the Kansas Reflector last week. It's our lead story this week, and it should be the lead story of every other newspaper around. And thank God when it happened to us, the Wichita Eagle, the Kansas City Star, the Kansas Reflector, and a whole bunch of other news organizations reported on this, because if they hadn't, well, I'd probably be in jail right now. Because charges were being prepared against me, against Phyllis, They had us charged under some trumped-up law, and we'd probably be incarcerated or fined or something. It would have been stupid. There's no way what we did broke any law. But the media have a responsibility not just to defend us, but to fix the system. The reason that Marion devolved as it did, from minor league bullying, getting worse and worse and worse and worse until we didn't give in. We just didn't surrender to the bullies. So they went that one step too far, where they crossed the line that they would get smashed down by other people. They didn't think so. They laughed at us. When I told someone, you can hear it on body cam, I said, "You're going to be on the front page of the New York Times." And they're like, "Ha ha 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 ha, sure. You're going to face a multi-million-dollar suit. Ha 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 ha, sure. Let's go have pizza afterward," which is what they did. They had a pizza party. And then said, "It really made my day to rip that phone out of somebody's hand." And there's all sorts of things that still remain to be resolved out of this particular case. I don't want to go into all the case, but I will. We've been very open about anything about our case. But what I do want to say is take the challenge. If a 70-year-old guy who hurt his knee, an old band injury, by the way, I kneeled on a rock here at KU playing the marching band. And understand that the world does change. In 1971, when I was in KU in the marching band, it was an all-male band. For some reason, we didn't think women could play in a marching band. I have no idea who ever thought this, but this shows you that society does change. We can change things. It's our job to do it. And for those young ones in this audience who are still studying journalism, study hard. Take advantage of your other courses. That Western Civ class that I got a note from, I actually find that I go back and read some of those Western Civ books from time to time. It's kind of appropriate now when you're reading about freedom and whatever else. There's value to that. There's value to education. Take advantage of it and then go out and do something with it. And don't worry about whether it's going to make you rich or famous or give you work-life harmony. Worry about whether at the end of your life you can look back and say, did I do something meaningful? And if you can say, I contributed to making democracy work, you did something meaningful. I appreciate the award. Thank you very much.